Ladies and gentlemen, you're rocking with a GOAT. Ken Dow giving you motivation for growth. 2 toes down, he keep it realer than most. He do it for the culture, that's always the goal. This is Strategic Moves with Ken Dow. This is Strategic Moves with Ken Dow.
What's up, party people? And the place to be, you're tuned in to Cleveland's best new podcast, Strategic Moves. I'm your host, Ken Dow. This is a place where I bring art, culture, business, and politics all together. And today, I have a special guest in my studio. She is none other than Dayton's mayor, Nan Whaley.
We were a working class family. Dad worked at the GM plant. When he got laid off, Mom picked up the slack at the laundromat. I'm Nan Whaley. And it's time we had a governor who puts improving the economy for families like ours first. That means focusing on manufacturing jobs and wages you can actually live on. As governor, I'll fight so your pay goes up, your bills go down, and the state government in Columbus finally works for you.
Hey Ken, how are you?
I'm doing good, Miss Whaley. How you doing?
Great. I love the space. Love to get to spend time with you, and excited to be on the best podcast in Cleveland.
Oh, there you go. I like that. So I want to talk to you and tell everybody Miss Whalen, or Mayor Whalen, is running for governor for the state of Ohio. And her and your lieutenant governor is none other than our own Cheryl Stevens,
right.
Also was part of your ticket. And so people want to know a little bit. I was reading in the newspaper, and I saw a poll. You know which poll I'm talking about. It was a poll I guess they did on Mike DeWine. And they talked about how Mike DeWine had a big, heavy lead, and he was doing good among Republicans. But they talked about the Democrats and how it was a big undecided number out there. People didn't get a chance to know who you or your opponent you're running against are about. So
you're fixing that. Let's fix it.
We're about to fix that
Let's
right
fix
now.
it.
So we want to know, who is Nan Whaley? Now, I got my bio and I got my stuff here. I heard that you moved to Dayton from Indiana. And tell me, so what part of Indiana are you from?
I'm from a small town on the southwest side of Indianapolis called Mooresville. When I left there, about 5,000 people lived there. Wow. I used to deliver the papers in town, the Indianapolis News, the afternoon paper.
So you got everybody.
Yeah, I got everybody in the town, right? And I went away to high school, actually. I went to... my town, the town is pretty conservative I'm from. And even in junior high, I noticed that the attitude of the school was, boys lead and girls cheerlead.
Okay.
And that's fine, but that wasn't for me. So I went to an all-girls Catholic boarding school in southern Indiana. Okay. Called Oldenburg Academy.
So you went away to school? You were gone away from home?
I'd come home on the weekends.
Really?
Yeah, and when I was 14, it was really hard because I got very homesick. Honestly, I love my parents, my mom and dad, and so it was hard. But I just really didn't like Mooresville. Frankly, my brother went there and he was fine, but there was in a small town sometimes, definitely thoughts about women are just a little different sometimes back in the 90s. So, so I went away to school, and that high school really fomented, what I thought about leadership. It was run by Franciscan nuns, and so it was very liberal. Okay, the more liberal part of the Catholic Church.
That's cool.
And they really taught me a lot about leadership. Taught me, about perseverance and about hey, you can get this done yourself. And that's where University of Dayton recruits out of. And so, because it's Catholic too, and so that's how I got to Dayton. As I went to UD, I got a scholarship to go there. I'm the first person to graduate from college in my family. Okay. And
so I want to talk about that because I read that you say your father was a steel worker.
He was an iron worker. He was an iron worker, and then when I was about 3, he went what we called inside to work at General Motors, and so then he was a member of UAW. Oh, okay. And then he retired in the Great Recession. They closed his plant. And so he was 59, so he took the early retirement because they could have at 59 they said, well, you can move,
I used to think that was old.
Yeah, but right,
but
he was
that's
young
still young because that's old.
Right, but they were like, well, you can just follow the next plant. But my parents had built their lives, and they were like, oh, we're not moving. So they took an early retirement, and then my brother followed me to college. And so he went to UD, and then he met his wife at UD, and then they settled in Cincinnati.
So how many brothers and sisters you got?
Just one. My brother, he's 2.5 years younger than me. We're very, very close.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
he's really great and one of my best friends. And
Oh, that's good.
he's an attorney.
He's in Dayton also?
No, he's in Cincinnati.
Oh, okay.
He got a job down there, and so he has 2 kids, my niece and nephew. One's named after me, so she's my favorite.
Oh,
Right.
Oh, she's named after you,
Yeah,
course.
of course, right? Her middle name is Nanette. My name is Nanette, and her middle name is Nanette.
Okay.
And
So your name is
Nan Whaley is
Nan
my full
Whaley.
name. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So Nan is easier.
Nan is
so,
easier.
right?
Okay.
And it's easier to spell. And like I've always been called Nan, or my mother calls me Nanny.
I was parking my car today. I said, "Well, I'm gonna interview Nan." I bet you get that a lot. When
I
you was
do.
young.
I did as a child too, right?
Right.
Right. Or if the folks are really older, they'll say like "No, Nanette,"
okay.
from that 1920. There was like a 1920s play or something.
Right.
That said that.
I got you.
So my brother is in Cincinnati, and so when he had his second child, my parents moved to Cincinnati, and so now we're all in Ohio.
Okay.
I try to see them every Friday for dinner, and one of the best things because they're about 45 minutes away from Dayton.
Okay.
So my husband and I will go down there. And yeah, they're retired now and happy as can be to be with grandkids. And
That's cool.
yeah, it's really great. They're big. My family's a big part of my life.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Well, you need that. You need that.
You do, right?
I
You
know
need
that's
support.
very important. So then you make it on into Dayton, and you go to the University of Dayton.
Yes, I went to UD. It's a little more conservative than the high school I went to.
Okay.
They had no college Democrats, and so my parents were not crazy about me coming to Ohio.
Okay.
Because when my dad was going to Troy, Ohio, one time because he was a welder, because he was a millwright, and they was doing millwright training in Troy, he had a Clinton Gore sticker on his truck in '92, and the people of Troy threw trash all in the back of his truck.
Really?
Yeah, and he's like, it's very conservative, and
Right.
he's like, oh, they're just a bunch of Republicans in Ohio. Now think about that. He's in Indiana, and he says this, and I'm
Right.
like, and I said, and he said, but if you're gonna go, they said, well, if you're gonna go to Ohio, they decide presidents, and the only reason why you get to go to school is because Bill Clinton's president.
Wow.
And because he opened access to student loans
Okay.
where it was still affordable to go to college, and so that's how I got to go.
Okay.
And so they said, well, so if you're going to go over there, and I was majoring in chemistry, you need to go help reelect Bill Clinton. And I'm like very close to my parents, so I did.
Really?
I took a bus to Democratic headquarters
Okay.
and started volunteering, and met great people in Dayton. I really fell in love in Dayton through Democratic headquarters, and then started the UD College Democrats. There was no college Democrats on
Really?
campus. No.
Wow.
It's a very conservative student body. I got picketed on campus.
I would believe that.
When I was trying to register to vote. When I was like 19, a man had a sign that said "Register to vote with the party that kills babies,"
Wow.
and he followed me around campus. So I'm, at a young age, I was like,
Well, I know they're very conservative down there because
Yeah.
my daughter goes to Central State, so she's graduating, right?
go Raiders, right?
And so I took her to school one day during the presidential summer when Trump was running. And, they sent me into town to get something. And so I put it in my GPS. I don't know where the hell I'm going. So I put it in GPS and I'm riding. And I rode into town, and it was the biggest Trump rally I ever. And it's like, I'm from up here. We don't see those
You don't
things,
see
right?
that.
I
Right.
roll up and I look like, oh my God. I roll right up in the middle of it all. But the Democratic headquarters was right across the street from it. But they was and I called home. I said, they throwing down here in this little town. The Democrats was across the street doing a big old thing, and Trump folks was. It was like the wildest thing I ever
Yeah,
seen.
it's probably like in Xenia, I would guess.
Yes,
right?
it was in Xenia. Yeah.
It's pretty conservative in Greene County.
Right.
And so Dayton is a Democratic city, but we are surrounded by the most conservative media market in the state.
Wow. Yeah, I believe that.
And so it's a very conservative media market. And so, I have spent most of my time, going to Democratic dinners for these counties because they couldn't find there's no other elected Democrat.
Right.
So I'm quite used to Shelby County and Greene. I've gone to been the speaker for their dinners for years. They've been really good. They've been really good to me, really supportive. The Democrats have been there because it can be lonely sometimes if you're a Democrat in those rural areas. So.
Sure.
And they've been super supportive of me through everything I've been through as mayor of Dayton. And
So have you noticed, have they built those clubs up over the years, or?
yeah, they're getting older. Most of these rural communities have lost a lot of young people, and they're older for sure.
Okay.
And they get excited when they get some new folks in. I think that's a big challenge for all of rural Ohio. It is really aging because they haven't seen a lot of opportunity, and they don't have, they've lost a lot of jobs too.
I understand.
And so that's some of the frustration that some of the Democrats have, but they're older folks. But some of the most progressive folks in the state you'll find in these rural counties is rural Democrats too. So
really,
oh yeah, I mean, they are, it's not popular to be a Democrat in some of the places they are, and they fight,
Right.
they stand on their beliefs for sure. So, you don't really, mess with rural Democrats sometimes. Because can you imagine being a Democrat in a place that votes 30% Democrat?
Right.
That's not, you got to be pretty.
You eating alone a lot.
You have to have the courage of your convictions.
Exactly.
And I've been, so on the governor's race, we've gone to 85 counties so far. We're almost done. We have Knox, Clinton, and Preble left. And, the rural counties have been really great, and I've learned a lot from them. You learn about their economy. And my favorite story, I love to tell this story, so I'm going to tell it to you. I was in Gallia County.
Okay.
Do you know where that is?
No.
Exactly. No one in Cleveland does. I was with some ministers, and they knew, one minister knew, and I was like, you might be the only person in Cleveland that knows where Gallia County is. It's on the Ohio River.
Okay.
It's where Rio Grande is the city, and it's known because Bob Evans was founded there.
Really?
The Bob Evans Farm is in Rio Grande. So we were going to Gallia County, and we met at the Bob Evans.
Wow.
Of course, the second Bob Evans ever, because the first one was in town or something. So there's about 18 Democrats that come out last summer to see me, which is a good crowd, and at noon on a weekday. And they're sitting at a long table, and I'm giving my pitch on why I should be the best candidate for governor. Well, this is last summer. People were really short-staffed on wait staff. The Bob Evans and Rio Grande's no different. And this guy is like sitting in a booth away from the table, and he can hear us because I'm having to speak up a bit because there are 18 people. And the guy says, he gets up in front of the whole restaurant and says, I've been waiting for my food for 45 minutes, and all I got to listen to is this politics. And the Gallia County Democrats, they get smaller in their seat. They're kind of embarrassed to be seen with me, right? Because they've been shouted out at the Bob Evans.
Right.
And I keep on going. And there's a woman with him, his wife.
Right.
And she gets up, and we had so many people, my staff had to sit at a booth. And so she gets up, walks to the booth where my staff is, and says, are you with them? And they bravely say yes. And she says, well, I'm a Republican, but I agree with everything that woman is saying.
Oh.
So I feel like you just got to show up some places, and we have some opportunities.
Okay.
And we need those, folks to stand up and be bold.
Well,
Right?
split household there. And he might be with you. He was just hungry.
You might be hungry. Yeah. I doubt it.
He was just hungry.
I didn't get the sense that this guy liked what I was saying.
Well, you saw sometimes, what happens when you need a Snicker, right?
You're right. You're right. He gets hangry.
He get hangry. He could be really angry sitting there like, man, I'm hungry, and this lady just keeps going on and on. It could have been all of that. So let's go back to college. All right. So you get through college. You say you wanted to do chemistry. So what you end up majoring?
I did major in chemistry. I got my degree in chemistry.
Okay.
I'm a first person to graduate from college, and so you got to make money.
Right. Right.
And so my parents were like, you can major in business or science.
Okay.
So I chose chemistry, and by my time my senior year, I really knew I wasn't going to use chemistry, but I had to get the degree. Okay. And it's too far in. So I got the degree. My brother was a finance major, so same thing, 2 years later. And then I went to work in between my junior and senior year at the Democratic headquarters. They had an opening as the executive director. I just couldn't stay away. And so started working in local campaigns, just as a volunteer. Volunteered for Tony Capizzi's mayor race in 1997. Did races as a volunteer. And just, decided I was going to live in Dayton. And in 1999, so I was just a year out of college, the Democratic National Committee, I had a friend that worked there, and she worked for the political director. And the political director needed an assistant, and so my friend had worked it out so I could get this job. And I knew that if I went to D.C., that I would never. I didn't have any relatives in Dayton. Nothing. I just loved Dayton. Okay. And so I knew that if I left, I would probably it'd be the place I went to college. Okay. And so I turned down the job and stayed in Dayton. And my friend didn't speak to me for 3 weeks. She was so mad because she had really worked for
you get the job.
And I just knew right then, like, I was like, this is a real fork in the road for me. And I like want to stay in this city. This is my city.
Okay.
And so stayed there and then worked through the 2000 election, worked 98, like as a regional field person for Lee Fisher and when he ran for governor. And in 2000, worked for the Al Gore race that never ended. I don't know if you remember that race.
Yes, I remember the hanging chads.
Oh, yes. And, that was back in the day where, you had to answer the phone. And so people would just call Democratic headquarters nonstop to complain about something in Florida. And you were like, when is this going to be over, right? I want to have Christmas. And then after the 2000 race, Carl Keith, the county auditor, who was one of my mentors, he became the county auditor, and I was his first hire.
Oh.
And so then I went to the county and worked in local government.
Okay. What'd you do there?
I was his assistant and learned all about county government and, board of revision, very exciting property tax, values, issues. It was great. It was a great experience. I still volunteered on campaigns at night, and that's where all my friends were.
I got you.
I was president of the Young Democrats and just active on campaigns. And I managed as a volunteer Tom Roberts' state senate race. And the Roberts family, Tom's sister Michelle was mentor of mine too. And so I managed that race. And at the time also Rick Carney was running for Congress. Okay. And I met my husband on that campaign. He was a volunteer on
that's
Rick
where
Carney's.
He pops up in the scene.
Yeah.
I was sitting there thinking, like, where do he comes in?
Yeah. So Rick
picture?
Carney still, no offense to everybody else, but he's been my favorite congressional candidate because I met my husband there. We didn't win, but I won.
So what's the husband's name?
His name's Sam Braun.
Okay.
And so he went to Kalamazoo College. He's from Xenia.
Oh, okay.
That place.
Okay. Yeah.
And his dad and his family were in media. His dad was a radio host, and his great uncle was on like TV with Ruth Lyons down in Cincinnati. That was a big deal in the 50s and 60s. And his name was Bob Braun. And then his cousin Rob is like on TV in Cincinnati. So they've, I think one of the reasons I always say Sam has done so well being married to me is he's been talked about his entire life. His dad's radio show was like very, one of those chatty morning shows.
Gotcha.
And so when I first started dating Sam, people would come up to him and be like, I've known you since you were 8 years old, which of course they didn't.
But his dad
Bucks talked about him all the time. So, he's very used to people being in public. It's just been the way his whole life. He's like the opposite of me. He's an introvert. I'm an extrovert. Okay. He's like really into data and numbers. Oh. I'm more into relationships and building coalitions and people. So we're I think it's a really great fit. And so we've been married now. We've been together 20 years and been married 15. Really? Yeah. Wow. I know you're thinking I'm too young to be married 20 years, right?
Oh, no. Wow. Well, I've been married 25 years.
Oh, good for you, Ken.
So, I can understand that. So, so what does he do for a living?
He works in a thing called the Shared Resource Center. He's a public servant. And basically, the Shared Resource Center is a council of governments that provides finance support to school districts. Okay. And so right now he is the Huber Heights City School Treasurer. Okay. And the Washington Township Finance Administrator. So he's busy. Okay. And he is loves being on the work of how to fund schools and fighting for schools money and I think he likes this a lot because he feels like he can really make a difference. This is a place where he's using his talents to help kids. And Huber Heights is a pretty good district. Wayne High School, which wins a lot of state championships. Yeah, I heard about them. Yes. You know about them. So they're a very proud district. A pretty good district, pretty diverse, and lots of good work happening in that school district.
Excellent. So we had 2013, right? Is that 2013 you decided to become mayor? What year was that you decided?
In 13,
In 13 you decided I'm going to run for mayor of Dayton. Is that how that went? You got recruited or what made you run for mayor?
So I never thought about even running for office at all. I loved working on campaigns like you do and doing that work. I'm not as good as you. I was a volunteer most of the time.
You work hard at it. You better. You're running for governor.
Yeah, right. No, I mean on the ground locally. So I did... But in 2002, when I was working on the state senate race for Tom, we had a mail consultant out of Chicago, and they also did work for Emily's List. And Emily's List was looking for someone to run for Congress against the first-term congressman in 2004. And they had decided they wanted a young woman with no baggage. And so the mail consultant said, oh, you should check out this Nan Whaley. And so Emily Sliss flew in 2004 and asked me to run for Congress. And they said, it was a very strange conversation. Because, you know, I'm 27 years old, 26, 27 years old. And they said, yeah, you just need to raise $1 million.
Wow.
Which you might say, you just need to go to the moon. Right?
Right.
I mean, I'm a working class family,
Right.
working class girl. I don't have any wealthy family or
Exactly.
I mean, I'm working for, you know, the government. I'm like, but I diligently brought, this was really kind. It was like these people from DC came to see me, asked me to run for office. I should take this seriously.
Right.
Brought my friends together and my family. And they were like, how are you ever going to find $1 million? I said, oh, yeah, that's right. It's never going to happen. So I called Emily's list back.
Oh, so you actually went through the process.
Oh, yeah. It was like, well, they came and asked. I had to, like, I had never considered it.
Right.
And I called them back and said, thank you so much. I'm not going to run for Congress. I think I'm going to run for Dayton City Commission. And they were like, whatever.
Right.
Like, they're not interested in Dayton City Commission. They're interesting kind of. So I ran for City Commission, and I was 29. And, you know, the Dayton City Commission has 4 members, and they run citywide.
Now, what's that?
It's just like your city council. It was a fancy word for council.
So you guys don't have council, you have commissions.
Commission, they run citywide.
Okay.
So
how many of those? You have 4?
4.
Okay.
And I ran, and I won. And I think that says a lot about Dayton. I was unmarried at the time.
Okay.
Renting a house. Had no relatives in Dayton. And they chose me. And I just think, what an amazing community that put their trust in somebody so new.
Right.
Because I know that doesn't happen a lot, you know. And we just, you know, did a grassroots campaign, walked door to door, talked to our friends and neighbors, asked for the support, and people seemed to like us. And
What's the population in Dayton?
140,000.
140,000 people. And what's the breakdown of like men, women, and minorities like?
It's about 40% African American, about 50% white, and about 9 or 10% others. So, so that's the makeup of it. And I live in a majority minority neighborhood. I've always have for about 20 some years now. It's the first neighborhood I'm like. When I started renting, I rented, and then I bought a house. My husband and I bought a house 4 doors down. We moved
right on the same street.
Same street. Yeah, I love my street and love my neighborhood. Love
That's
the people
beautiful.
I live with. So
that's cool.
So I've lived there now. I've lived on the street 21 years. So that's the population. It's a Democratic city, but we run nonpartisan.
Okay.
So it's like Cleveland here, right? Top 2 move forward to the general.
Okay.
So that's that's how I got started. I didn't like being an elected official the first year. It was really hard.
How long was those terms?
4 years.
4 years. Okay.
Yeah. So ran in 2009, then ran for in 2005, then ran for re-election in 2009.
Okay.
And in
you did 2 terms.
I did 2 terms.
Okay.
Yeah, and the second term in 2009 was very difficult in Dayton. It was when the Great Recession had been like Dayton had I think the worst Great Recession next to Detroit in the country because we lost Delphi and General Motors closed. Like I mean, I think it was 62,000 jobs lost in the metro. I mean, it was 16% of our job base gone. It was really serious.
Huge.
Yeah, and you could feel it being like rock bottom. NCR left that year. And so it was a very difficult time in Dayton at that time. And the mayor lost, which was like heartbreaking. And this guy that won was like a libertarian, but he didn't know he was a libertarian. He, you know, said, I'm not a Democrat or Republican. But he would say to people, like when he was mayor, like someone would say, I'd like lines on the street painted. And he'd say, well, you just go do that yourself. That's very libertarian. Right.
You know, it was a few of them popping out every once in a while. So it's amazing he got elected.
And he was terrible.
Right.
And so I ran against him.
Oh.
He was so terrible.
That's still married? That's how you got it?
Yeah, I ran against him. So I like, and the rest of the city commission supported me. They were like, one of us has got to do it, man.
You got to get it out of here, right?
And actually, and when I was running for mayor, we polled in like the beginning of the race. I was in last place. Yeah, there were 3 people running, and I was in last place. And the other 2 candidates would like meet and say, "Oh, isn't it sad about Nan? You know, she's so nice. She doesn't have a prayer." When the primary happened, we won with 51% of the vote. Okay. And they got 25 and 24. Ooh. So they were like fighting for second. Wow. And that mayor, he didn't even get in second. He came in third. The first time in the history of Dayton, a sitting mayor came in last.
He came in last.
He didn't make it to the general.
So it was you and the Libertarian?
No, that's Libertarian.
Oh, that's Libertarian. He was
came in
so
last.
it was you and whoever came in second.
Yes.
And who was that?
A.J. Wagner.
A.J. Wagner, okay.
And he had been in office for 4 decades.
Okay.
So he was formidable. And we won by 12 points in the general.
Okay. All right.
So it was really great. That was a great race in 2013. And then, I loved being mayor. Got a lot done. We passed high quality preschool in 2016.
Wait. We gonna go back before then because it seemed like before all the good stuff happened, you had a whole bunch of crazy stuff happening too, right? Tornadoes.
Yeah, that was 2019.
That was 19.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
pre-K was in 13.
20. So I got elected in 14. Then pre-K happened in 16.
Okay.
The day and the county voted for Donald Trump, which was terrible.
Correct.
But Dayton voted for preschool.
Excellent.
And so we passed high quality preschool for every 4-year-old.
Now, what's the difference in that and pre-K?
It's
universal pre-K. You know what I mean?
It's the same. So ours is basically every group has different. Ours is considered a national best practice. So fancy cities like Santa Barbara are coming into Dayton to figure out how we did this.
Okay.
So basically, if you live in the city and you have a 3 or 4-year-old, you can get funding at some level for your kid to go to preschool.
Okay.
And so it's based on income, right? But everybody gets a little bit. Even the most wealthy gets something. Because I believe social policies work best when everybody's gets a piece of it, right? Like Social Security, right? When you make it only a certain income gets something, then there's not a complete buy-in for everybody. Correct. So that's a fundamental basic principle I have about how we should provide social services. And it makes people want to be right. And also then it's not stigmatized either because if everybody's in it, like in Medicaid right now, you can go lots of places and people say, oh, I'm not on Medicaid when they are because they think they're stigmatized. Correct. If everybody has it, even just a bit.
Ain't nobody would care.
Yeah, so that's what we did with preschool.
Oh, okay.
And then the other thing we did differently was we made it for choice. So because we knew most of the preschool being provided in Dayton was provided by Black women, right? And they got in the business because they love kids. Okay. But they didn't write a business plan or they just were I got kids. I want to help my families and friends. And so I'll start a childcare. And so what we did was, and this has been different than other preschool models, we had everybody come in. So if you were offering any sort of preschool and you want to be part of Preschool Promise, you're in. And that allowed for a lot more choice. Because a lot of the preschool models say you have to go to the schools. Right. But if you have a 3-year-old kid, you've had 3-year-olds, you don't know if you necessarily want, every child's different or your time, right. You might want to go to an employer's site. Right. Or you might want to, when my parents took me to preschool, it was in, Betty's garage. Correct. 2 doors down, right? Correct. So we wanted to make sure that we had tons of choice for preschool, which is very different than the rest of the ones I've seen around. Correct. So that was really key. And then it also helped build Black businesses, right? Because then these, African-American women who run this business, they get a business plan. We also funded their ability for their teachers to go to training. And then we helped them step up to quality. So because, the state was getting ready to do 1 star, they would already be there. Oh.
Well, that's the big hit to it because that was a big hurdle for them to.
No, ours were already ready, so we got ahead of it, and then we helped pay for that funding and helped them get through it, and they had a partner in it, and Excellent. So I've been really proud of that. There's it was another consequence of it that was great. So then we've also been able, we've made great strides, on closing the Black boy achievement gap and really working on cognitive discipline. So our preschool teachers all over, get all this different kind of training. So we're not just recreating bad practices in our schools. And our kids are starting to get more and more kindergarten ready. Okay. And in COVID, when you couldn't find childcare, right, we had funded some of that. So that was less of a burden for our families.
Do the mayor is in charge of the schools? And y'all have an elected school board?
Elected school board. Okay. And I did get engaged in running candidates for school board so we could have some common sense school districts. We were on the verge of takeover. Okay. And they got us out of that. So that was great. Okay. And I'm proud of that. But, I think it should be separately elected. Frankly, that's a big job. School board members, toughest job in local government.
Really?
Oh, they don't get paid hardly anything. And everyone's got a lot of opinions that's very passionate. It's a really tough job. So I have a lot of respect for school board members, especially what they've gone through last year, right? With pandemic and masks.
Trying to figure out how to make it work.
And everybody yelling at them. It's a really tough job.
I watched some of those. That was really crazy.
And they get paid $150 a meeting or something.
Right. And they were literally getting yelled at, threatened. I mean, it was really, really bad.
It's tough.
Some of that was really terrible. And a lot of it was in some of the rural counties.
Yeah. Or in suburban counties, too. It was very tough, suburban areas.
It was really bad. bad.
Yeah.
So now let's go back again. Let's talk about some more stuff. You were saying so leading up to the tornadoes.
Yes.
Any other things we want to touch on? Because I do know that you had the tornadoes, you had the
Shooting.
KKK, you had the shooting.
That was
so let's talk about each of those things. I want to pick one. The first one is let's pick the tornadoes. What was up with the tornadoes?
Well, they all the 2019 year of 2019 in Dayton was really, really tough. It was almost like a black swan year, right? So
All of that happened in 19?
it happened within 10 weeks.
Wow.
The KKK rally that came from out of state was Memorial Day weekend on a Saturday.
Wow.
And 48 hours later, 15 tornadoes ripped through Dayton.
Wow.
That was the same weekend. And that had never happened in Dayton. Tornadoes had never happened in Dayton.
They literally brought all the hell with them,
Yeah,
didn't they?
yeah. We actually made that joke, like, well, the Lord has spoken about these guys. But yeah, so we got through, and like actually the New York Times wrote like hate comes to Dayton and Dayton fights back. Like, I was so impressed.
So what
with
was that all about? Decided they just wanted, and they didn't have marches everywhere, so I know it's not nothing. They just decided to call you up, and I know you was like, oh my God, really?
They choose cities that are like not like this was like from southern Madison, Indiana or somewhere. And these people like look at like cities they can wreak havoc on.
Okay.
And so they have their First Amendment speech rights. And so they come in to incite hatred. That's all this is. And look, I mean, this was like a year and a half after Charlottesville. So like you have to take this stuff very seriously after Charlottesville. Trump is president.
Right. Yeah.
The extreme split is, so, we took it very, very seriously. And no incident happened, and there's only like 9 of them, but they're terrible.
How many came in? How many you think really?
24.
Really?
They wreak so much havoc. That's what's so insane about it. But you don't know if it's because of the way the internet works. You don't know if it's going to be 24 or 2,000.
Right. So you got to be prepared.
You got to be prepared.
Wow. So for all it was worth, it wasn't even worth all
no, it's not.
thousands of dollars
Yeah, it's
you probably
complete. Yeah, it's so sad that you have to do that to be because Charlottesville happened, and you don't want to be Charlottesville.
Okay.
So then 2 days later, the tornadoes happened. So then we're cleaning the city up. And then 10 weeks later, on August 4th.
What was the tornadoes? How bad did it do the city? Was it neighborhood or downtown? Or
It didn't hit downtown. It hit right east of downtown in a neighborhood called Old North Dayton, which is like half a mile.
Okay.
And that's where like a lot of our immigrants families live, the Hiska Turks, and then also like Eastern European folks used to live. So that's like the neighborhood that it hit the hardest.
Okay.
And then it hit some of the suburbs. It hit Harrison Township, Beaver Creek, and Trotwood. So it kind of went in and scooped into the city.
Tear up a lot of houses right now?
Yeah, and by the grace of God, no one died, which is amazing. I mean, it was serious. It's like 15 tornadoes.
Wow.
Yeah, thousands of houses.
Whoa.
Yeah, and people would tell me stories about like they were hanging on like to a door and
Wow.
I mean, and then you'd go see him like on Troy Street. I remember I saw a man. He said, "Well, I hung on to the door, and Ken, there was like no door left. Like it was just like the frame. Of the house left the next morning.
Wow.
So it was pretty tough.
So do the city kicks in, or that's all you had? Government comes, federal government comes in. So how you deal with that as a mayor when that happens? That's
So you immediately just assume it'll be a FEMA site, and so you just start cleaning, and you keep a list of everything you spend money on. You spend a lot of money, and then you ask for reimbursement from the federal government.
Wow. Did FEMA come in? I imagine so. With 15 tornadoes.
They did, but you had the way that it works in like emergency preparedness is like the first 48 hours is on the local government. And you've probably seen this when they get ready for hurricanes. Like they say, hey, this many hours is on the local government, and then FEMA comes in. And so with tornadoes, you have a little more time with hurricanes. Tornadoes, you just never know.
Okay.
And so the city just has to go. So we were there right away. And, it hits, the real challenge of the tornadoes is it hit 2 generators for our water plants. So, we have backup generators should the electricity go. So it hit like DP&L's like electrical power. Okay. And then it hit our backup generators. Wow. So it hit both. So we were without water for about 24 hours. And that was what was stressful. Okay. Because you can get, you can be without electricity. Right. But being without water is a real problem. And so we got that back up. Okay. And that, people had to boil for a few days because,
because you had to get it back up.
But we got water back up. And that once you get the water back up, you can pretty much handle it. I remember this because when I was a city commissioner, Hurricane Ike went through Dayton. Like the hurricane was in Dayton, not in Dayton, it was in the south, but the winds were so bad. We were out without electricity for a week in Dayton.
Okay.
But we always had water because we were able to keep the generators going. And so we never lost water. And so it made that disaster, that was like a really serious windstorm, not that tough. I mean, I remember I was out of electricity for like 6 days, but you could get through it because you had water.
Because you had water.
And so water is, I think that's the best thing, the most important thing in any sort of disaster is how can you get water up. Potable water is so key to life. And so, so we went and just started cleaning and we cleaned. And what was amazing about that is like, again, this is why I love my city. Like people didn't ask for, they just started doing.
Just doing it, right.
And they just, you'd see like, huge groups of people come into Dayton starting to clean sites.
I was going to ask, you got a lot of collaboration from
Just
other
amazing,
cities
yeah.
and other people to come in and help with everything.
Yeah, and people just come in. They would just come in. And now it's taken years, right? So I think we just closed. I went to a celebration in the fall of last year, 2 years later. We just closed. Took 2 years for all of the folks that were rebuilding and helping
Trying
out.
to get back home. Wow.
So that was May to June of 2019. And then August 4th of 2019, we experienced the mass shooting the day, like 12 hours after El Paso. It was like called the El Paso Dayton shooting. El Paso had a shooting where a man went into a Walmart and just started shooting. I think around 20 some people died there. And then and I remember looking at it because anytime there was a shooting, I'm very active in the Conference of Mayors. I was president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. You would, immediately text the mayor that was going through. I always had a sense on these mass shootings that it wasn't a question of if, but when. I just think you feel that way as a mayor. I felt that. And I would always go, when we had sessions at the Conference of Mayors, I'd go and listen to Buddy Dyer of Orlando, who had the Pulse nightclub shooting. Or, would listen to... San Antonio's mayor. So we just would go because you would try to learn because there was really no place to learn what to do about these things. Or when, Bill Peduto went through the Tree of Life shooting in Pittsburgh, right? And so you just learn from each other through your relationships. And I remember seeing it online that evening. I was, out with my husband and I said, oh no, I have to call DeMargo, because El Paso had a shooting and never thinking like the next morning I'd be on a shooting myself. And so that night, the Oregon District's one of the best places to hang out in Dayton. It's like, and it's super diverse. Like, everybody has their spot in the district, and it's a beautiful night in August in Dayton. And at 1 a.m, a man with like an assault rifle comes through like an alley and begins to just shoot everyone in sight. He killed 9 and injured 27 people in 32 seconds.
Wow.
If you can imagine, 32 seconds. And luckily Dayton police was there because it was 1 a.m, and we usually have police to help.
Right.
The bars closed. Hey, you can't go home. You don't have to go home. You can't stay here. So they were there, and they killed him.
Wow.
And if not, he was like going into one of these bars. It's like a long shotgun, not, like we call a long, a long bar. He would have killed hundreds had they not stopped him. Jeez. Because everybody ringing in to that space.
Never know why he did that.
No, I mean, I said the next day, because everybody wants to know why. I said, I bet we'll never know why. And sure enough, like he was on a lot of drugs. He had some, past mental health issues that never had been diagnosed, but it all made sense with hindsight.
Right.
And he had a real fascination for guns. And I think like doing, death by suicide this way. Like, so he killed his sister in the shooting. And so, I mean, just to tell you.
And she was at the club, or
she was just like, she was with him earlier that night.
He killed her, then did all this other stuff?
No, he killed her. She was one of the 9.
Whoa.
Yeah. And they, and I don't think he like knew he did it.
Wow.
So it was really
deep.
terrible.
That's terrible.
Terrible.
God, that's really terrible.
It was. And look, you get up the next, you get a city attorney knocked on my door. I thought it was like I'm a close-knit neighborhood. I thought my neighbors, needed to get in their house or something. And I was like, what's the matter? And, and someone had just texted me like while I was like half awake going to my door. And he's like, and so he told me. And I would like really immediately like wanted to put like on my yoga pants and like get right there.
Right. And
my husband and him were like, Nan, you need to like take a shower. You're going to be kind of busy today. So you got a couple minutes here. So I got dressed, went to the site and got to work.
Wow.
And it's just, I'll tell you what, like the the mayors across the country were amazing. I think it was dozens and dozens that texted me. The mayor of Pittsburgh called me and gave me really good advice.
So did you go to the actual crime scene?
The bodies were gone, but I was at the scene. I saw like the meat still on the taco truck, you know, because you had little taco trucks at night, and I saw the firefighters cleaning the blood off the site, and you know, like the yellow.
The markers were still down.
Yes, all of that.
How many bullets did the cop say he?
I can't remember. I can't remember. It was hundreds of bullets.
Because he had an assault like you said, 32 seconds. So God, he just ripped through everything. That is so crazy.
And so you look, you know, then you know a lot of folks, you know, and I think the mayor of Pittsburgh gave me really good advice. He was like, "You focus on the families and the victims.
Okay,
this is about them."
Right.
And so every decision you make is basically, you know, you want to protect the names of the victims so their families find out first, so they don't hear about it.
Right.
So we really were protective of that and really pushing to make sure everybody got reached out, because we, you know, you can only hold this for so long with media. And then, you know, I had learned from the other mayors, like, you got to communicate all the time. And so, you know, went to the press.
Okay.
And just every few hours, and I said, like, I'm going to be here every 3 hours, and if we know something, we can tell you. I'll be here, but I'm gonna be here every 3 hours. So therefore, don't misreport something, because I'll be here every 3 hours, and we'll tell you, because you know you really were trying to protect the victims' names, and so if they could come back here, and one of them did, like, I think between the second and third press conference, they tried to identify a victim who wasn't a victim, and so I came and said, like, I told you I'd be here every 3 hours. Like, you don't need to be mistelling. We will tell you.
Right.
So you just had, I think, like, communication that's the job of mayor, I think, during those periods. And just, you know, when you have the difference between the tornado and the shooting is when you have the tornado, people can go do something right away. Right. You can go cleaning. Right. When you have a shooting, nobody can do it. And they feel it's a real helpless feeling for your community. So I knew I wanted to have the vigil that night, and I asked my staff, like, I'd like to have this vigil at the site, because we had all these small businesses, and I wanted us to reclaim the space really fast.
Right.
And so we had the vigil, and never in a million years did I think it would be as many people came. I didn't have a good understanding that it was like national news. I just thought I was talking to Dayton. And so, you know, that evening, and I got up, and it was just the whole street. I couldn't see anything but people, and it just showed, like, how much love there is in Dayton. It was very moving.
So, let's ask you a little harder question, and we'll stay on this gun stuff. You know, based off of all of that you went through, based on the fact that you're going through Ohio, based on the fact that our governor now just put together legislation that don't require you to have a license, to concealed carry license. What's your view on guns? How do you win these folks over who want their guns? But you understand where I'm going with what you got going. I know that it's hard. I mean, it's hard to go in those little places and tell these people, we want you to have your weapons, but I don't want you shooting up my town. You know? So what's your plan? How you plan on getting around that?
Well, look, I think it's a big reason why I'm in this race. When Mike DeWine took to the stage at that vigil, do you remember what the people of Dayton said? They said to do something. They called on, they drowned it out in the governor. Do something.
And what'd he do? He passed his dumbass legislation. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't understand.
So that's what upsets me, right?
Right.
So he calls the next day, I'm going to do something now. Okay. Gives me a plan. It wasn't as far as I'd like to go, but if someone's if you're walking in the direction I like, I'll go with you.
I got you.
So I took him at his word, stood next to him.
Okay.
Stood next to him when he, said the Strong Ohio plan, right? So, and some people were angry at me at that. And I said, look, I'm going to take people at their word. And then he did absolutely nothing. Actually, he did worse. And never in my wildest dreams did I think when the people of Dayton were shouting, do something, that he would do something to make it worse.
Right.
And look, I think my position isn't an extreme position. My position of like universal background checks, 9 out of 10 Ohioans agree with.
Okay.
9 out of 10 Ohioans don't agree that the Ohio State Buckeyes are the best football team, Ken. So, 9 out of 10 Ohioans.
Right.
And we're not talking about responsible gun owners here. We're talking about people that should never have guns in the first place.
Right.
That's what, and the majority of NRA members agree with my position. So what Mike DeWine chose to do is he is afraid, he is weak, and he is unwilling to stand up to the radicals in his party. And that's unacceptable to me as an Ohioan, right? I want someone that is going to govern us where the majority is and to make our communities more safe. And he won't do that. He is too weak to make our communities more safe. There's two of them.
Okay.
You're talking about permitless concealed carry last week, where he signed it, even though if he vetoed it, it probably would have been done. It was not veto proof, right?
Okay.
So he could have stopped permitless concealed carry, and even police officers are against this, right?
Correct.
This is
an easy one.
This is so the majority. Police officers, police chief, public health officials, clergy, community members, the majority of the NRA. We all agree this is terrible. It is bad. It
So
makes
why
every
he do
community because he's afraid of his extreme base. He's afraid, and he is weak.
His polls shows that he's so far ahead of his opponents. I mean, I don't see why he would be afraid.
He's always been look at this, and so he did this the first time on Stand Your Ground, January 4th, 2021. Every data point shows that it makes all of our communities less safe, especially African American communities. Did it anyway, right? Right in the midst, did it anyway because he's weak. If you look at the polls in the primary, he is not above 50% in any single poll in a Republican primary. He's got a real problem.
Okay.
Imagine he's probably going to win his primary because you have two candidates that are polling like 20 and 23. But you add them together, it's actually more than what Mike DeWine's getting.
I see what you're saying.
And so he's got to, think about that. We're going to have a sitting governor come out of his primary under 50%. It's pretty weak.
It's pretty weak.
And so he's doing everything he can, regardless if it makes our communities less safe, regardless if it's best for Ohio, just to make sure that those folks, those extreme ideas, an extreme part, it's not the majority. He's done this on making our communities less safe. He's done this on COVID, right? Because he.
Well, some think he did well on COVID.
Well, he did when he had Amy Acton. Once he let Amy Acton get pushed out, came weak.
He came weak again.
Right, who did the mask mandates when we had no vaccine or testing?
Right.
Mayors.
Exactly.
Dayton was the first city to do a mask mandate, and all the other cities came along after that, right?
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. Mike DeWine didn't do that.
No, that's true.
Weak.
Okay.
Weak on that. When you saw the state of the state, he never even mentioned COVID. He's afraid to even say the word, right? For fear that they'll be like, that's right, I'm so mad at it.
Right. Well, they don't want to hear COVID.
Exactly.
I mean, you say that now, they'll go crazy.
Yeah.
I told my wife the other day, while I was watching TV, they don't even mention it on TV no more. They don't mention the stats about it. They don't mention anything about it anymore. I said, there's so much to make this norm. That is it. So what I want to do, we want to break you down because I know you're a busy woman, and I want
I could talk to you all day.
I know
that's
the problem with this show.
Yeah.
And they said we probably talk an hour, over an hour, and it's easy, and we'll have you come back to continue.
For sure.
But I want to round this out because I do want a couple things. One, I want you to round me out with talking about the accomplishments from, I know there's a lot of tragedy and you led the city through that. Now give me some of the accomplishments because you talked about the closure of some of the big things that happened into the city that put you close to the recession. Now you built a lot of that up and there's been some good things. And then also take me from that to now we did a little bit in on DeWine, but talk about now I want to run and be the next governor.
Sure.
And this is why. And then we will continue the conversation another time. How about that?
Absolutely. Okay. And look, what I see from Mike DeWine is a guy that is too weak to stand up to his party and to do what he knows is right for Ohio. And further, we are now in a state that the FBI is called the most corrupt in the country. Think about that. Like all these different state houses, Ohio's is the most corrupt. And it's around the First Energy scandal. And Mike DeWine was complicit in this. First Energy funded his campaign in 2018. And then in return, they gave him everything, he gave them everything they wanted. $1 billion bailout paid for on our electric bills every month. Their top lobbyist got to be the top utility regulator, even though everybody said don't do it. That guy's house got raided by the FBI. And that same day, Mike DeWine said he was a great guy.
Right.
When First Energy settled with the Department of Justice, they admitted they bribed that guy with $4 million. We are not being served by this kind of government. And you add that to the fact that he's too weak to stand up to the extremists, in his party. like we need a new way forward. And we need a governor that's paying attention to the issues that we talk about every day as mayors, where we need people's wages to go up, we need bills to go down.
Correct.
And we need to have a government that works for all of us, right? And we don't have that right now. So that's why I'm running. You know, folks can check us out at nanwhaley.com. And we're really excited. You know, we've, gotten to 85 counties now. We're talking to everybody, going everywhere. And look, it's a historic ticket with me and Cheryl. You know, we have never had a nominee that's been a woman for governor in the history of Ohio from any party. So certainly we haven't had 2 women running from the top.
Right.
And like as Democrats, that's where we've been underperforming. You know, if you compare when we lost in 2018, we looked at what happened. Why did Michigan and Pennsylvania win, but not Ohio? And what we found, so we looked at, Western Pennsylvania for Eastern Ohio, because very similar kind of voters. And then we looked at the suburbs of Detroit and compared them to the suburbs of Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati, which makes sense. What we found is we were underperforming with women 6 to 10 points in those suburban areas compared to the Detroit suburbs. Now, for the past 3 decades, we've been running moderate white guys for governor.
Right.
And we've gotten close, but we always get the same result. We do the same thing, expecting a different result, and get the same. In Michigan, they run women for governor, and they do better with women voters. So it's actually, I think, an advantage for us to try something different and bold, to run a woman, because that is a pathway for us to get more voters, particularly in suburban areas. And Mike DeWine has given us another issue because he doesn't want to keep these communities safe. And so that gives us a huge opportunity in the general.
Wow. So, Nan, camera right there. This will be your closing mark. You got whatever seconds you want to do. Tell them about where they can reach you, what website, all of that. And you're Nan Whaley, and you're running for?
I'm Nan Whaley, running for governor. Check me out at nanwhaley.com. And Ken Dow of Strategic Moves, thanks for having me on today.
Thank you. And thanks for coming again. We're going to have you back to do some more of this.
This was fun.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, we could talk all day.
I've got a question for you. What does somebody from Dayton know about Tough? To me, Tough is my dad, a union auto worker who lost his job but never lost his dignity. And Tough is my mom, who went to work at the laundromat behind our house to make ends meet. We could use a little more Tough in Columbus, and our leaders are too weak to do something. It's time for a little bit of Dayton toughness in Columbus.